everyone. It's so nice to have all of you to Tech Talks. Welcome to Tech Talks, presented by Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. For those of us who own Apple devices, this time of year, we anxiously await the iOS update. We all try to imagine what the update will do to our phones or iPads or other Apple devices. Apple tells us upgrading to the latest version of iOS provides us with the latest features, security updates, and bug fixes that are done to improve the workings of your device. However, sometimes that update can really change the layout of your device and cause us all some confusion. Not to mention many of the mini updates for the weeks to come, which fix the bugs, and hopefully makes our tech life good again. Tonight, we have a special guest to speak to us about the iOS update. We are very pleased to welcome the tech juggernaut, Matt Volprecht. A little bit about Matthew before we begin. At the age of 3, Matthew lost his vision. From an early age, technology played a major part in Matt's life, enabling him to learn, work, play, create, communicate, and express himself in ways never before thought possible. Matt worked with his mom, who was a technology coordinator in a local school district, helping her with computer support, setup, and maintenance. It didn't take long for friends and coworkers to learn of Matthew's skills. Matt attended Elizabethtown College to major in music education, where technology remained an integral part of his life. Exploring all worlds of technology, and interest in products became of great interest. He officially received his first Apple certification as an Apple Certified Associate in Mac OS Yosemite. At this time, Matt branded his business as the Tech Juggernaut, a company whose mission is to make the use of 21st century technology in life, in learning, work, and play, a positive, enjoyable, productive, and beneficial experience. This is done through demonstration, friendly, knowledgeable advice, support, and training. Matthew is a certified Apple teacher and working towards the highest level of Apple certification. So before I turn our presentation over to Matt, let's review our Tech Talk format for this evening. So to ask a question, Matthew will open up points for questions. When you hear Matthew say, "Do you have any questions?" we ask that you use the raise your hand feature and you'll be called on. For those of you on your phones, the raise your hand feature is *9. That will raise and lower your hand. And *6 will mute or unmute you, giving you the opportunity to ask the question. If you're on a computer, Alt-Y, raise and lower your hand. Alt-A, mute and unmute command. If you're using the Zoom app, on the iPad, top right, to select more option on the top, flick down to raise hand, and the iPhone, this feature is located at the bottom of the screen on the right. So here with us now to bring some clarity and peace back into our tech lives, to talk to us about the iOS update.
Calendar, group, 7.
Juggernaut, Matt Volprecht. Matthew.
Thank you so much, and I do appreciate that that intro. It's always wonderful to know that you're hopefully making a difference to folks in some way, and that's what I believe I've been called to do, and in many senses, and especially right now at this moment, in hopefully making it a little bit easier for us to understand some of what we're seeing in iOS 14 and to appreciate some of the benefits and the new features of these awesome Apple updates. So thank you so much for having me. Christina, Elsa, Linda, Suzanne, everybody, and all the participants this evening. I want to just wish you all a good evening. Hope you're doing well, healthy and safe. And basically, I'm going to spend a little bit of time tonight talking to you about some of the most prominent new features introduced in some of these Apple updates, and perhaps some smaller ones that we may not be aware of or may not have known about yet. We're going to entertain questions and see if we can, as was mentioned, add, maybe provide some clarity. If there are things you're not sure how to do, or things you are experiencing that you feel may be bugs, or those types of things, we're going to try to talk about that too. Now, a couple of reminders before we get started. Of course, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be together, and 90 minutes is very, very generous. And, it is indeed about as long as you'd want to do something like this, probably in most settings. But by the same token, when you're trying to talk about new features and, how-tos and all that, it really is a short sweep of the clock. And there's no possible way we could ever cover everything. And we kind of had to make a decision up front as to the format of this. And I will tell you this, it's not going to be a teaching experience. It's going to be more of an overview of the kinds of things that you can do with this new software, with these new updates. And for teaching purposes, if there's, something that you want to know how to do, if it's something I can answer quickly, I will indeed do that. And otherwise, before the end of this tonight, we're going to point you to some valuable resources that will help you going forward. So the first question that I want to address before we really even get into the specifics of the features is that question of, should I update? I have seen that question probably more times than I could count every time there is a new major operating system release, and sometimes even if there's a new small incremental update. And that question comes to me directly, and sometimes by email listservs that I'm either running or a part of. And it's that same question: should I update it? What is this going to do to my devices? Does it make sense for me to update? And having been somebody, and admittedly, I've been working with Apple products and using Apple products since 2009. And so for over a decade now, really when it was first possible to do so with the iPhone 3GS and, similar time starting with a Macintosh as well. And I have always chosen to update very, very quickly, because unlike some of the other competition out there, it is a better experience when upgrading on Apple devices than it is on other platforms. You do have this level of integration, and because Apple controls the entire experience, the hardware, the software, and the services, including our screen reader, of course, VoiceOver, that many of us depend on entirely for being able to use this stuff, it really is not the same kind of concern as when we're using Windows and we have to say, well, okay, if I upgrade, to Windows 10 or Windows whatever it is my printer still going to work? Is my sound card still going to work? Is JAWS or NVDA still going to work? Or when are they going to release those updates so that I can take advantage of these latest features? Well, that's just not a problem with Apple, because everything is controlled by the same company. So when you get your new version of iOS, for example, then of course the VoiceOver screen reader has been updated also to go along with that, as have all of the built-in or native Apple apps that ship with your devices, and many, many others, of course. And so from day one, the first time it was possible for me to do so, which was back in iOS, iOS 4, or maybe even some incremental 3 updates I probably installed. I was always very quick to do that. And as soon as it really became possible to do so, I actually started beta testing. And so I'm often running these things typically a couple months earlier before the general public is, so that I can get used to them. So yeah, this year I've been running iOS 14 since July. When I do that, you sort of develop a fondness for the software that you're running. I've read books and, heard accounts from test pilots who, try unproven experimental equipment. And they always say they kind of get a they kind of develop a relationship with their planes, you know, and they can sort of figure out, and they sort of know what the little quirks are going to be in each one and how it's going to react, and, you know, what to do to get around it and how to work through it. And they have almost personalities. That's kind of how I feel in a sort of humorous way, but that's kind of how I feel about these iOS software updates. And it's very important to me, and it's something I take very seriously when it comes to beta testing. And I've seen remarkable strides from July to the typical, you know, September, October release dates for this software. It is incredible how much they improve, and it is incredible how stable they really are by the time they make it to public release. But having said that, you know, as software is developed by humans, and no one's perfect in this human, you know, we will see bugs. There are billions of lines of code in this software. And no matter how much you test, no matter how many people you test, you're never going to get a release that has 0 bugs in it. You may get a release that has 0 bugs that affect you, which is actually where I'm at with iOS 14 at this point. I can't think of one thing in iOS 14 that I'm bothered by, but I know there are other people who are not sharing that experience. The question becomes, at the end of the day, does it make sense to update or not? And I really feel very strongly compelled to tell you that, you know, here at TTJ, we always recommend updating as soon as you possibly can. There are several reasons for that. The first one is because with each release, major or minor, you're going to get a host of new security and privacy and performance enhancements that really do help to protect you in this digital world in which we live, that really do help you to be more productive. Things that are under the hood, things you may not even ever know about, that are sort of working together to make for a more secure, more private, and a safer experience. And the second reason is, of course, because there are all these really cool features that do get added every year. And I know some people think, well, I really don't need them. I'm fine with what I have. And that may be true. But what you're going to find over time is that you just start using them without even realizing they're there. And before you know it, something you've always wished you could be able to do, you're now suddenly able to do. For me, it all starts to blur together. As I said, I've been using iOS 14 since July. So I really had to go back this evening and think and make sure that I had sort of a list of the features that are new, because it just all sort of melds together for me after a while. And so you do get to take advantage of these new features. The other reason that it's really important to update is because if you do decide to get new hardware, you're going to have that new software anyway. You know, Apple has announced some really, really awesome products this year, from the new 8th generation iPad and the iPad Air, all the way up to the iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, and all the ones in between, of course, and new watches. All of these products, which are leaps and bounds ahead of the already awesome products that we had last year, they're all going to come with iOS 14. They're not physically capable of running iOS 13. And so it is really, really critical that we embrace this from the perspective of, this is the now. This is here. This is what we use. And then there really is one final point to why I feel that it's so important to upgrade. And it's a bit controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I think it needs to be said. As a community of blind or visually impaired users, we are a minority of users. Sometime ask one of your smart speakers if you've got a HomePod or an Amazon Echo or a Google Assistant or something, or just, you know, Siri on your iPhones even. Ask how many iPhone users there are around the world. And that's just iPhone. Just take one sampling there, and you're going to find a staggering number. I don't remember what it is, but it is a staggering number. And then of that number, you have to figure that the number of folks who are visually impaired using those products equal probably, if I had to guess, I don't have data to back this up, if I had to guess, I would guess 1% of that number of users. It might be a little higher than that, but not by much. And so what that means is that a lot of people are not using their devices the way we're using them. A lot of them are not using VoiceOver. A lot of them are not experiencing things in the way that we are experiencing them. Therefore, we have a sort of implied obligation, as far as I'm concerned, to help to make these things the best that they can be by reporting in a kind, godly, positive, uplifting, constructive way what we're seeing. If we're seeing a problem, and it really genuinely is a problem, there are means for us to report that. And Apple does take it seriously. And by the way, 9 times out of 10, you don't even have to report it. It gets fixed anyhow. I just worked with an app today that Apple has that has had a bug in it for about the last month or so, and it is completely fixed today. I was so excited. Praise God. It's the Apple Clips app, and it works beautifully. And I was so happy to see that update was released today. And I never even reported it. I should have reported it, to be honest with you, but I just didn't. And I was fairly confident I wouldn't need to, and I didn't. I mean, it was taken care of. But I wouldn't normally advise not reporting it. I think, there are great ways to go about that. And so by you using it, you are the sampling of the population. And that's, again, why I beta test. It's not an ego thing. I give all the glory to God anyway. But I always think to myself, if I don't beta test, is there a chance that something that I would have tested that nobody else might have thought of could now be missed because I didn't beta test? And so every year I always come back to it and I do it again. And so I think those are the reasons why it's so important to update your software, keep it up to date, keep it up to the latest version. And then those incremental updates, I mean, they're really critical because then is when the bugs that may have been introduced in the 0.0 releases are actually going to be fixed. And that's where you really want to be. So with each release now, we're on 14.1 in the public. I'm running 14.2. With each new update, things are going to get better and better. And we're going to see, in fact, we're already seeing a really, really solid, really stable release. Now, iOS 14 in many ways was or is truly a cooling down year. iOS 13 was jam-packed with new features and redesigned. And I'm not 100% convinced that there was a single app that didn't at least get some form of an overhaul or a new feature in iOS 13. Most all of them were modified and updated and upgraded in some way. And so with this did come a series of growing pains along the way, but it was still usable. I was still using it by August of last year. And, it ended up being a really, really pleasant operating system to use with tons of new features, things that some people were wanting for years: desktop class web browsing on their iPads, USB flash drive support for downloading and zipping and unzipping files, and just so many other things, shared folders in Notes, iCloud shared folders, and, the list was huge with iOS 13. In my opinion, I'm not sure that Apple ever made this statement, but in my opinion, iOS 13 was the single update with the biggest changes ever since the initial release of what we now call iOS. And so it often happens that after that, you really do need a sort of regrouping year, or a cooling down year, where you have an update that is noticeably smaller. And iOS 14 definitely fits that bill. And so we knew that going in that 14 would be likely to be more stable right out of the gate, and that it would have fewer new things to get used to. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any, because it has quite a few, and the ones there are truly fantastic. And it really does begin right away with the home screen. And so the first feature that I want to talk about tonight is the redesigned iOS 14 home screen. Now, this is something that a lot of people have been asking for. And the first feature of the new redesigned iOS 14 home screen is the ability to have widgets right on your home screen. Now, in fairness, you were actually able to do this on the iPad last year in version 13, but the capabilities have been expanded a little bit, and they've also been brought to the iPhone in really what is an excellent implementation. And so let me begin by explaining what a widget actually is. A widget is a little, almost an applet, you might call it. It provides quick access to information without you having to actually open an app. So it's able to be up and, starting in iOS 10, you had widgets, but they were dedicated to their own page. They were relegated to what's known as the Today view, which was, it suddenly became page one, and everybody using iOS 10 said, oh, why are my pages moved? You might remember those times if you were using it before that. Well, it was because they made iOS 10, they made page 1 now page 2. And page 1 was called the widgets page, or the today view. Well, the widgets now are able to be put right alongside of your other apps by being pinned, as it's known, to the home screen. And on an iPhone, you can actually pin widgets to any page of apps that you want. On an iPad, it's limited to the first page, but on and I think on an iPad, boy, I'd have to, I think on the iPad, I apologize if I'm wrong about this. I think on the iPad, it is still limited to landscape mode as well. But on the iPhone, it doesn't matter. And again, on the iPhone, you can have widgets on as many pages as you want. So again, a widget is quick access to relevant information from your apps without you having to open those apps. So let me give you a couple examples. If I were to tap on the weather app on my iPhone, all I would hear is the word weather. And if I have my hints enabled, it'll say double tap to open. Now, if I want to see what the temperature is outside, the current weather conditions, anything like that, I have to double tap on that app. Not a big deal. Definitely a first world thing, right? We can do that, okay? But what if we could see right on our home screen, right beside our favorite apps, we could see that it is currently clear outside, and it's, I don't know, it's pretty chilly here. I looked a couple minutes ago at my weather widget, and my iPad is in the other room. I'll grab it if we need to do any demos, but I think it was like already 40 degrees outside and falling or close to that. It was plummeting. Maybe it was 50. I think we're at 50, but I could see that right on my home screen, and it told me, that there's maybe rain expected, or, whatever the weather conditions are doing. I can see that right there if I put a weather widget on my home screen. Another one that I like to have my home screen is my calendar, because I like to see my upcoming events, and it will show me the next event on a given day, or if there's no more events that day, pretty soon it'll show me tomorrow's events. So throughout the day today, even before getting my alerts, my notifications, I could see that I was expected to be at this meeting tonight at 7 p.m. right on my home screen. Now, for me, I like to have calendars and reminders. I sort of view that as one thing, even though they're two different apps with two distinct purposes, and I use both of them very extensively, and they do serve different purposes, but I want to be able to see both of them on my home screen. I didn't want to take up two separate widget spots, though. So what I did, iOS 14 allows you to create widget stacks. Now, a widget stack is very much like a folder. If you know how to create folders on your home screen and move multiple apps into the same folder, you can do the same thing with widgets, and you can put two or more widgets in a stack. And then there is a rotor action. So if I tap on or swipe to my calendar widget, it tells me that it's a stack. Now, if I swipe to the right, it's going to read to me, what my next event is, what the date is. But if I swipe up or down, it's going to say next widget. And I can double tap to move quickly to my reminders widget so that I can also see my next reminder. And if there's a reminder coming up soon, it may automatically shift that stack to feature the reminders stack for me. I can still go back to the calendar if I want, but it's going to show me the most relevant thing at a given moment. And there's even a smart stack, which is pre-designed and features intelligence based upon Siri's proactive suggestions, which automatically feature the apps that are relevant to you based upon the time of day, based upon your behavior patterns, and more. For example, if you put the smart stack on your home screen, you might at one moment see the weather. At another moment, you might see an upcoming event. Yet at another moment, you might see a playlist, because maybe there's a certain time of day that you always listen to music, or any one of a number of other things. So a lot of these native apps, if you have a place to go that you travel maybe every day, or maybe it's just coming up on your calendar. Maybe you have on your calendar that you're going to have lunch with somebody tomorrow at noon. Well, tomorrow at about 10 or 11 in the morning, it might say to you, hey, Apple Maps is in your widget. It'll show you, that it's going to take you 15 minutes to get to lunch. You can pull up the directions. You can do all of that. And that's all in this smart stack. And it happens automatically, again, based upon Siri. Because remember, Siri is not just the voice that we talk to. Siri is always working in the background, if you allow her to, and learning your behavior patterns, learning where you go, who you communicate with, and what you're doing. And so that it can easily make these suggestions to you. And it does this in a completely private and secure way. So your data is not at risk. Your data is not being shared, and it's not being associated with you. So there's no risks there of privacy infringement or anything like that. But it really does make your life easier because of the added convenience factor. Now, there are widgets from a lot of these native Apple apps. I've mentioned several already: calendar, maps, reminders, weather. You can have a battery widget. You can have photos, music, TV, notes, just a ton of the built-in apps, and a lot of third-party apps. Apps like Yelp, Open Table, some of the recipe apps, a Bible app that I use, Wikipedia. There's just tons of apps that offer quick access to information from those apps, and you can pin that right on the home screen alongside of your other apps. Now, it's so important to understand that if you pin a widget to your home screen, you are taking up space. So this may potentially shift your app pages. You know, the more widgets you add, it may increase the number of total pages of apps that you have, because when you add a widget, it's taking up the space that something else might have previously taken up. You can always remove widgets if you want. You can edit them. And of course, again, since it's not a teaching session, I'm not going to per se get into that, but it is very easy. You can move the widgets around. You can do all sorts of things. And again, the iPad supports this, at least in landscape too. So this is a great feature for us to start out with. That's not the only change to the home screen in iOS. One of the most talked about features of the home screen is, at least on the iPhone, this is not present on the iPad, but it is on the iPhone, is the app library. And I want to talk a little about the app library, what it is, and I want to also kind of clear up some of the myths about it because of different questions that I've been getting over time. So the app library is automatically installed on your device, automatically made available as the very, very last page after all of your pages of apps, right on your home screen. And that's one of the first questions I get. Well, how do I enable it? Or I don't want it. How do I disable it? You don't have to. It's just there if you want to use it. And likewise, I get some people, how do I set it up? You don't have to. The app library is always there. If you don't want it, just don't use it. Just ignore it. Don't ever swipe over to it. And if you do swipe to it without meaning to, then just either press the home button if you've got a device with a home button, or swipe up from the bottom to do your go home gesture if you don't have a home button. And what happens here is this is an automatic aggregation of every app that has been installed onto your iPhone. It is presented in ways that make it easy to find the apps you're looking for. Because have you ever installed an app and you say, well, I just don't know where that went? Maybe I don't even know what it's called because maybe it's a short name, or I accidentally moved it somewhere and I don't know if it's in a folder, or I just don't know what happened, Well, this eliminates that potential altogether. So when you first go to the app library, what you see is there is a search field, which is actually way more powerful than just a search field. And I'm going to come back to that. But to its right, you're going to have the most recently installed and recently used apps. And then you're going to have categories of apps. Now, these categories may not necessarily be the same as the folder names that you've given if you have folders. These are totally separate from that. Your folders stay unchanged. Your home screens stay unchanged. But this is an automatic thing based upon the App Store categories for apps that Apple has and all of these kinds of things. So you might see a category of apps for social media, and it might have, if you have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have more than 3 apps, there's going to be a See All button, and you can open up and view all of the apps in that social media category. You might have an entertainment category, a productivity, a lifestyle, all of these categories, and any of them, they're going to display the first 3 apps. And if you want to see more, you can just double tap on the button to do so, and it's going to expand that category and open it up to show you all the rest of the apps that are in that category. And so this, combined with the recently installed or recently used apps, already provides a great resource for you to navigate through and find your apps. But where it really gets cool is with the search field. So you can double tap in this search field and you can type or dictate the name of an app that you might wish to find, and you will get the results to the right of what you searched for. But not only that, when you double tap in that search field, there is an entire alphabetical list. It kind of reminds me of the item chooser that voiceover users that we have access to. There is an entire alphabetical list of every single app installed on your device. There's an index. You can swipe through. You can just see all of your apps from A to Z. So if all else fails and you need to know where a certain app is, you can just look for it in the alphabet and you will find it. And that is the app library. Now, when you install a new app, there is a setting. If you go to settings, you can decide ahead of time whether new apps automatically get put on the home screen or if they just get relegated to the app library. Everything goes to the app library because it is the total picture, the aggregation of everything. But you can decide, do I also still want apps to show up on the home screen when I install them as well? And when you try to delete an app, you'll notice on devices that support the app library, which are basically the iPhone and the iPod Touch, you'll notice that the option actually now says remove. And you'll have two choices. You'll be able to remove the app from the home screen, but leave it installed so it's still available through your app library, or actually delete the app entirely if you really don't want to have it at all. So you've got a new choice there as well. So this is the new app library on iOS 14. Again, it's available exclusively on the iPhone and the iPad, and it supplements these pinned widgets. So you've got like live content right there on your home screen. And this also supplements a brand new app that has been added to the iPhone, which is called Translate. Translate is a quick way to have any words that you say or type be translated from one language to another. And you've got English, Spanish, Italian, French, German, Chinese. There are tons and tons of languages there. You can read with VoiceOver, or you can have them spoken for you so they're pronounced correctly. You can even have a conversation view where you can hold your phone in landscape mode and you can show your translated text to someone. So it takes up almost a full screen view, so that if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you don't know their language, you can show them what it is you're trying to say, face it out to them, and let them actually see it. And so that's a brand new app that's been installed. And all of this combined makes this new experience on the iPhone. Now, of course, we're just getting started because there are tons of new features. And so one of the next ones, and let me, there we go. I just was checking the time. Let me share with you next about the Messages app. You know, of all the apps that are on the iPhone and the iPad and these different devices, I have got to believe, and we've got a couple students here from our voiceover class. You've heard us say this, Rita and I have both said this. I've got to believe that the Messages app is one of the most popular, if not the most popular app that's out there. People use this to communicate, certainly within their families and friend groups, but a lot of people now, even in the professional world, are using this because it's quick. You can make really professional group conversations. You can even use Apple's business chat feature now, which is so cool. If you ever want to text with Apple or AT&T, or there's a few other companies that are using this already, and hopefully many more on the way, you no longer have to wait on hold or wait in a chat window. You can use iMessage and use your Messages app, and they'll text you when they can. And then you can text them back when you can. You no longer have to sit and wait in the app. I don't think people have even realized how this has revolutionized things. So this Messages app is just so cool and so powerful and so utilized. And it's gotten some great new features. And several of these features do have to do directly with group conversations. Group conversations are absolutely awesome. In our family, we have a family chat group that is my wife, my son, my daughter, and myself. And frequently we communicate. You know, the kids are home with me. We do full-time online schooling for them, which I'm really, really happy about. Praise God. It's such a blessing to have them home with me all day. And so typically we're in the same house, but sometimes, you know, one of them's back in the room and he's finished his work and he's playing an Xbox game or something, and it's time for lunch. You know, maybe it's easier to just text them, or, you know, we text the group and say, what does everybody want for lunch? And they just respond. I have a chat with the kids. I have a main instructor chat, so that the 5 of us on the TTJ instructor team that's been teaching your free classes, we can talk to each other, you know, and we can keep things straight. So group conversations are just wonderful. But there there have been some things that it would be nice if they could be made easier. And in iOS 14, indeed they have. And the first thing, before we even get to the group conversation features, I want to get to one feature that stands out that is not just for groups, it's for anybody. And this is pinned message conversations. This is truly amazing because every one of us, I'm sure, has at least a handful of people that we talk to regularly that are very important to us, either because they're a loved one, a family member, a really close friend, or maybe our boss, or maybe a group of coworkers or something like that. Well, now you can pin your favorite and most important conversations at the top of the list of messages so that no matter how many other people message you, or no matter how many other people you text, your pinned conversations will always stay at the very top of the list. And you can have up to 9 of them available at the top of the list. Now, this is super easy to do with VoiceOver. When you're in the list of conversations in your Messages app, just swipe to a conversation that you want to pin, and then swipe up and down on it. And just like you'll find delete in the rotor or hide alerts, you're also going to find pin, and you just double tap on it. And if you didn't really mean to pin it, then you'll find unpin when you swipe up and down, and you can double tap on it. As I said, you can have up to 9. I think I've got 8. And it's a really, really fantastic way to keep those really important messages at the top of the list. And now let's talk about groups. So when you create a group, you can create a group conversation, and you can even turn that group text into a group FaceTime call, as long as everybody in the group is an Apple user. The other thing you can do if everybody in the group is an Apple user is you can give names to your conversation. You've been able to do this for a couple of years now. And so you can provide, as I mentioned, I've got one called Family Chat, one called Main Instructor Chat, one called Kids Chat. These are names that we've given. And, you can have multiple you can have multiple conversations with the same people, but with different names. For example, let's say that I have a group of people that I'm communicating with on a specific subject. Maybe right now, we're communicating about an upcoming dinner event that's coming later this week, and so we're all texting in this group to find out what we should make or what we should, bring or whatever. And then we've got something coming up next month that's a totally different thing. Maybe we're working on a project, maybe it's a vacation or a trip, but it's the same group of people. We can actually use the same group we already had, and that's fine. A lot of times we'll do that. But we can also create a brand new group with the same people and give it a totally different name so that only the things that are relevant to that particular group are in that group conversation, so that we're not confused about things. And of course, we can use Siri to message these groups and a whole lot more. All of the features that work on iMessages work in group iMessages. So that includes your emoji, your Animoji and Memoji. It includes messaging apps like attaching photos and videos, and tapbacks, which lets you give a like or a love or a laugh to someone's message. And other great features, of course, as well, like the ability to send screen and bubble effects, which really add a lot of fun and pizzazz to your messages, even for VoiceOver users. So all of those things work in group messages, providing, of course, that everybody in the group is an Apple user. But now we've got some new features in iOS 14 for group messages. And the first one has to do with those groups that get extra chatty at times. And actually, it's sort of 2 features that I like to lump into one. I always tell people in our main instructor chat, when we bring a new instructor on board, as we did this week, I said, hey, I'm going to warn you now, I work late. I said, I am a night person. I like to spend time with the kids, and the kids sometimes like to stay up late. Sometimes I'm doing work at 3 or 4 in the morning. And sometimes I'm texting the main instructor chat at 3 or 4 in the morning. Well, a couple people are not necessarily up at 3 or 4 in the morning. Some of them are, but not everybody. So I said, you may want to hide your alerts. But here's what's really cool. In iOS 14, they have introduced mentions. Now, mentions are kind of based upon the same concept as if you've ever done this on Twitter. You put a hashtag and then you put the person's name that you're mentioning. And that's really what they want you to do in the Messages app as well. Use the hash, the number sign, and then use the name of the person as they appear. And actually, it seems to work even if you don't use that hashtag, because I've seen it work a few times even without that. Now, what happens here is 2 things. Number one, your rotor, your VoiceOver rotor, now has access to those mentions. You'll hear that if you've got your hints on, it'll say use the rotor to access mentions, misspelled words. So mentions, if you set the rotor to mentions, you can swipe up and down to find every instance in which you are mentioned in a message, so that you can read just those messages. But the other thing you can do is you can hide the alerts for that conversation so that you're not seeing my messages at 3 or 4 in the morning. I mean, they're there for later review, but they're not waking you up. If you don't want to turn on Do Not Disturb, which of course is another option you have, but this just mutes that conversation. But what if I need to talk to you? What if I'm actually talking to a specific person in that group? Well, then they will get an alert. Then they will get a notification when they are mentioned, but no other time. And that is mentions in the Messages app. Of course, in Messages, there are also new emojis, new Animoji. There's a lot of new great features in some of these other fun things as well. Now, another app that I would like to talk about just briefly, and it's not actually so much a specific new feature as it is just a slightly new way of doing things, and I still want to talk about it, because I said we weren't going to do a lot of teaching tonight, more just, talking about possibilities, but I do want to talk about this one, because one of the apps that has been the biggest sources of contention since 14 was released is the Apple Calendar app. And people have just been going crazy about, how do I use the calendar app now? I can't get it to work. And I will tell you this, you can get it to work. It works great. And actually, in my opinion, it's better than it used to be. There are some who will not agree, and that's okay. Everybody's got their own opinion on that. You're entitled to it, but this is the way it is for now. And it works, and it is doable. And that's the important part. That's the real key factor here is, can you get done what you need to get done? And the answer is absolutely. Now, I will admit to you, when I first downloaded iOS 14 in beta, and this was probably beta 2 or 3 that I was really looking at the calendar, I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. And I said, boy, I got to file this bug report right away. I said, this is bad. This calendar, if they don't fix this, nobody's going to be able to use the calendar with VoiceOver. And I literally had a bug report typed up. Okay. I actually had it typed up. But in these bug report forms, they ask you to reproduce, describe step by step what you're doing, so that those engineers can then go and try it for themselves. And so I said, I need to try this again a second time, a third time, however many it was, to make sure that I'm not missing a step when I write it down. And lo and behold, praise God, as I'm doing this, all of a sudden, I became aware of how to do it properly. And you know what I did? I instantly deleted the bug report draft, because I didn't need it. It was not a bug at all. There is no bug here. This is a redesign of the way VoiceOver interprets the calendar. And you know what's even more interesting? When I was doing it, and then I thought I had figured out how to do it, I said to my sighted family, my wife, my son, and my daughter, I said, tell me something. I said, I want to make sure I'm doing this right, because it seems to be working with VoiceOver. But I said, it's different. I said, so let me show you what I'm doing and see if it's the same thing you're seeing on screen. And I did it. And they said, well, what do you mean it's different? And I said, well, it doesn't have the picker options that it used to have to select the date. Well, they had no idea what I was talking about. Apparently, those things never existed for sighted users. So what they've actually done is they've actually just made it more like what our sighted counterparts are experiencing. So here's how it works. When you create a new event, you're going to type the name of your event. You're going to maybe put the location if you want. I suggest it if it is, going to have if it's not virtual, because then you can use time to leave notifications based on traffic conditions and all these other great things. So I recommend the location. But of course, as you know, the field that we're talking about is the starts and ends fields for the start and end dates. Now, what you have is, the first thing you've got is a month picker. It's not only a picker, it's a button as well. Imagine that. And when you double tap the button, it brings up the year picker. And what that does, you don't have to use that, but it's an easier way of going years ahead. If I want to schedule an event for 2023, I don't need to go month by month. If I bring that picker up by double tapping it, then I bring up the year adjuster, and I can just choose that as the year. Otherwise, I don't even need to double tap on that. It's just a picker. And so what I do is I swipe up and down to find the month on which the event begins. Once I have selected that month, everything to the right of it is a calendar view of that month, starting with the first of the month all the way to whatever the last date of that month may be, 31st, 30th, whatever. And what you do is you simply double tap on the day that the event starts or ends on. Now, if you want a quicker way, you can use the 3-finger scroll. If you don't want to have to swipe all the way from the 1st to the 30th or the, whatever, you can still, you can use the 3-finger scroll. You can also do a 4-finger single tap near the bottom of your screen to get past that. And so you just double tap the date that the event actually starts on. And then when you tap up near the upper middle of your screen, you're going to find now that the next field, well, actually it was before that. I apologize. I had it backwards. You're going to find the time field before you even find this other stuff, but I always pick the date first and swipe back to the left. So you're going to find this time field. And this is another one that has just thrown people for a loop. And it is slightly, well, the reason it does is because VoiceOver, it's not a bug. Let me be very clear. It's not a bug. I don't even know if I would argue for changing it because I'm not really sure that it's right to change it. What VoiceOver is doing as you're entering that time is it's reading the presumed time based upon what you've entered. So that's why things sound weird. You've entered an 8 and it says 0008. And that, it's because that's the only thing it has to go by. That's actually what's showing up in the edit field. So how do you enter these times properly? You're typing them. You're not using a picker. How do you do it? The way to do it is, first of all, don't overthink it. Don't worry about, is my VoiceOver cursor at the beginning? Is it at the end? Do I need to delete? No, don't do any of that. You do that, you're going to start messing yourself up. Don't read into it that way. Just double tap in the field where it says time and type the time. How do you type the time? No punctuations, no colon, none of this, just numbers. You're going to type the hour and the minute. That's literally it. It can be a 1 or a 2-digit hour, depending on what time of day it is, and a 2-digit minute. So 9 o'clock is 900. It is as simple as that. You just type the 3 digits or 4 digits and you've entered your time. And then you can select either the AM or the PM. And that's how you enter times now. And that's true for the calendar. It's true for reminders. It's true for the clock app. And what's really interesting is third-party apps are adopting it as well. But some of them already had it. That's what's really baffling about this. Some of them already, now it wasn't always accessible in the third-party apps, but it's gotten better, praise the Lord. But it wasn't always. But the more and more of the third-party apps are adopting that standard as well. And so it really is something to get used to at first. But once you do, I think you're going to like it. Now, why do I like it better? I mean, it doesn't matter if you do. It's personal preference. Nobody's going to hold it against you. But why do I like it better? Because 9 times out of 10, it's actually going to save you gestures. All right, let me give you an example. Let me suppose that today's October 28th. So let's suppose I'm scheduling an event for December the 3rd. Now, the way we used to have to do it in iOS 13, unless we wanted to first put the calendar on December 3rd or use Siri, which we can still do either of those. Those still work just fine in version 14. If you're doing that, this doesn't even affect you. But if you're doing it through the calendar app and trying to find the date while you're creating the event, what do you have to do in iOS 13? Well, here you are. It's the 28th of October. So that's most likely where the calendar is going to be focused. So you hit add event, you hit starts. Now you got to swipe one at a time, 28, 29, 30, 31, November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. You get all the way to December 3rd. Now there was a little trick. You could double tap, hold, and slide on that picker to move it more quickly. But it was my experience, a lot of people didn't know you could do that, so they weren't doing it. The other thing with that is it really does require a lot of practice so you don't overshoot. And so it was very, very doable. But compare it to what you do now. So again, let me recreate that vision for you. October 28th to December 3rd, you got to go day by day by day, 29, 30, 31, November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all the way up to December 3rd. In iOS 14, I swipe the month picker twice up to December, swipe 3 to the right, and I'm on the 3rd, and I double tap.
Matthew?
Yes.
Matthew, it's Linda. We do have a question. Can you take a moment for a question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm about done with that with the calendar anyway, and so yeah, let's go ahead and take that question.
Suzanne, you had a question.
Hi, I was muted. Is it work the same way on the iPad?
It does work the same way on the iPad. It works exactly the same way. The only thing is that you're gonna, when on the iPad, once you have double tapped on the date that you want, like the 3rd in my example, what you're gonna want to do then is to tap up above the days, higher up on the screen, and you'll hear it say dismiss pop-up. You can double tap on that and it'll bring you back to the regular add event screen without those calendar dates showing up. You may be able to Z scrub, your 2-finger scrub. You may be able to Z scrub out of that calendar view also, but I've not tried that. But definitely once you double tap on the date, if you just tap up above it, it'll say dismiss pop up and you just double tap and then you can keep entering information.
Okay. And does the keypad come up like the, like a 1 through 10 on, as a line, or does it come up as like a keypad on a phone?
For the time enter, it is I believe it's a telephone style keypad, and it's kind of positioned in a different place than you would think on the iPad. It's like, now it's been a while since I've done one, but I think it's like on the lower right-hand side of the iPad or something, but it is telephone style.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have another question from Christina.
Yeah.
Christina.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are
Matt.
you?
Good, thank you. Wonderful. Question on the calendar also. I can't get it to flick up. I can double tap it and then I have the calendar that displays, but it says it's a picker, but when I'm just not swiping right, but I'm not getting it to swipe up.
Are you talking about the month view?
Yeah.
Well,
and the day.
If you double tap on the month view, then it's not going to swipe. You want to not double tap on it, because when you double tap on it, it has brought up the year, the years.
Okay.
And so if you do that, it kind of gets in the way of the month. Yeah, you need to leave that hidden and not double tap on it at all, and then swipe up on it, and you'll be able to choose it. And then the time is not a picker. I think VoiceOver actually says it's a picker, but it's not. You really
I love
do
the
need to type.
time. I love doing it that way, writing it in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions for Matt, before he continues? Okay. All right. Thank you, Matthew. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So that was something I really wanted to spend some time on, because I knew it was an issue that people were experiencing. Let's talk about some of the other. I mean, there's way too much to cover in one session, but there have been tremendous new features added to the Notes app. You can have folders in folders. So you've already been able to create Notes folders before. You get a Notes folder to start, but maybe you want to create a folder, specifically for a certain project, and that's a new folder inside of Notes, or a groceries folder. There's just all kinds of reasons you might want to create. And sometimes you even want to share these folders collaboratively so that other people can participate in them. Now it's even possible to have folder within folder. So subfolders or nested folders can be inside of a folder that you create in Notes. Another great new feature of iOS 14 is some of the redesign of the music app, where the Listen Now tab is the very first tab, and it's kind of like the Watch Now tab in the TV app, showing you what is coming up, what you've been listening to, and recommendations based upon your listening preferences. And new radio stations have been added to the Apple Music One, formerly Beats One radio. Now there's also Apple Music Hits and Apple Music Country are new, as well as all of the other great radio stations. Some of the features that have been added to one of my favorites in the Reminders app. Now in Reminders, we have already been able to create time-based reminders, right? Remind me on the 1st of November at 3 p.m. to change the filter, or, whatever. And we've been able to create recurring reminders, remind me to water the plants every Sunday. We've also been able to create location-based reminders. You know, remind me to call my wife when I leave work. When I pass by the grocery store, remind me to get milk. When I get home, remind me, or when I leave, you know, whatever. So we've already been able to do that. We've also been able to have person-based reminders. As of iOS 13, we could say, remind me when messaging. And we could choose a person in our contacts so that we could easily be reminded the next time we talk to them that we needed to ask them a certain question or send them some money with Apple Pay Cash or whatever the case may be. But now in iOS 14, we are able to assign shared reminders. So it's been possible to create lists of reminders. Again, like a grocery list. There's a family list that gets created if you use Apple's family sharing feature. And you can create any other list you want, and you can share them with people that you choose to share them with. Now in iOS 14, it is possible to assign tasks to specific people. If there's something that my wife specifically needs me or the kids to do on a particular day, she can put it on that family reminders list, but then assign it to one of us specifically so that that person is informed that they are the ones that need to complete the task. That is a new feature of the Reminders app. The Apple Maps app has been given several important additions. For one thing, the addition of the electric vehicle charging stations on maps to show you when those are coming up, new cycling lane information in Apple Maps, and of course the brand new guides, which are renamed from collections. Now in iOS 13, you were able to make collections. A collection was kind of just what its name suggested. You could create a collection of your favorite restaurants, of the most important places you go, or maybe create them around an event. You know, my vacation to the beach. Here's all the places there. So that was a collection. Now in iOS 14, you can still do that. But in addition to that now, first of all, they've renamed them as guides. Now there are curated guides that are also available in addition to the cities have these guides that are created for you so that you can find, as maybe a new visitor to that city, you know, the recommended restaurants and hotels and other information that you might want to have right there in Apple Maps. And of course, Apple Maps has already been great for turn-by-turn voice-guided directions, both driving and walking. You've been able to share your ETA with other people. It provides lane guidance and real-time traffic updates and automatically alters the route if it needs to. And all of this is available in iOS 14 and continues to be improved upon. And with some of the overhauled maps now just starting to make their way to the Canadian. It's interesting because we in the United States got the overhauled maps before the end of 2019, and it has really been a big hit with voiceover users because now you can use the walking directions in maps even if you can't see. You know, obviously you're going to want, if you're doing it alone, you're going to want to be proficient in cane travel or a guide dog or something, but it is doable. It's doable now with the walking directions in Apple Maps because of thanks to the overhauled maps that were introduced at the end of 2019. Well, those were supposed to rather quickly make their way and roll out to other countries. And then, of course, COVID happened. And so it seems that may have delayed it a little bit, but Apple has stated now that they're getting ready to release the ones for Canada. That is a big deal. It's a big deal for people who can see. People who can see love it because the maps look real for the first time. You can see real landscapes and various formations, and you can see lakes and other things, but also, buildings and everything. But for those of us who are voiceover users, it improves the walking direction experience tremendously. So this is such a fantastic feature in Apple Maps. Now, one of the other features that I want to talk about with the iOS 14 release, of course, is related to photos. And in the Photos app, a lot of people think, well, why would a blind person want to use photos? Well, there's many, many reasons why a person who's blind might want to use photos. But what has been added to photos in iOS 14 that actually is really useful for sighted users as well, but it also helps those of us who can't see. For the first time, without a third-party app, You used to be able to do it with a third-party app, but without a third-party app now, you can do captions. You can add captions to your photos. And so it is possible to type a caption and then have VoiceOver read that to you later. And the way you read it is when you swipe to a photo, VoiceOver will say there's more content available, or it may play a tone if there's more content. You can choose what the setting is. And then all you do is you set the rotor to more content and you swipe up and down and it reads all kinds of image attributes, including the new captions that you have added. This is brand new in iOS 14. And while we're talking about photos and while we're talking about accessibility, I want to talk about a handful of new features that have been added for that. Under the category of VoiceOver Recognition. Now, I don't know exactly what words Apple would use here. They may not choose to use as strong of language as I'm about to use, but as far as I'm concerned, VoiceOver Recognition has been designed to make inaccessible things accessible. And there are three components to VoiceOver Recognition. There's image recognition, text recognition, and screen recognition. Now, the screen recognition is only going to be available on iPhone 10 and newer. And I think iPad 7th generation and maybe 6th, and the iPad Pro and Air models, the iPad Air 3rd and 4th gen and the Pros. But what is happening here? Let's start with the image recognition. You know, it's not perfect, but it is a huge leap forward. I can't tell you how many times it has described flawlessly an image for me in my Photos app or an image on the web that it has seen. And it will actually, you know, you'll hear a little tone played and it'll say to you, you know, a person sitting on a couch, drinking a cup of coffee or with a cup, you know, whatever. These image descriptions are amazing. And it is using machine learning and artificial intelligence to come up with a description of these images. And text recognition, of course, reads or attempts to read the text in photos and so forth that may normally be inaccessible. Again, it's not 100% perfect, but it drastically improves things. And then there's screen recognition, which is really a brand new thing. And I think will continue to get better and better the longer it's out. Now, what this does, again, it is to be used in inaccessible apps. And I really want to stress that. If you have an app that's accessible, you need to really keep screen recognition off. It's not needed. And it's probably going to make the app much more cumbersome if you enable it, as the native accessibility frameworks that have been implemented properly are kind of going to be put by the wayside while it's enabled. So you want to disable it, if that's such a word, but you know what I'm saying. But in an app that's not accessible, this can mean the difference. This may mean that you are able to use the app. Now, I can tell you it does not work yet in all situations. I was really hoping, you know, my kids and my wife and I, we love Apple Arcade. There's a lot of really fun games we can play as a family, but they're typically not accessible yet. That's not Apple's fault. It's just these are brand new games. They're third-party apps, and many of them are very visual. Apple Arcade games are some of the most gorgeous and highest quality games in existence on any platform. Their designs, their themes, their music, everything about them is really superb quality. And with this does come, of course, a host of accessibility challenges. And I was really hoping some of these would be made accessible with screen recognition. And it did improve it to where I could read some of the screens, but it didn't do enough in those Apple Arcade games yet. I'm very hopeful with time, though. But there were two situations I can think of specifically. One was on a website where, for some odd reason, nothing was working on that website with VoiceOver. It was just very, very inaccessible, this one page. And I turned screen recognition on, and I was fully able to navigate that website. I was able to do everything I needed to do, complete the transaction I was trying to complete, and everything was great. Another example is the Hbo Max app. Hbo Max is a fantastic service offered by AT&T. A lot of great movies and shows and original series and everything, kids shows and all that. And it's very accessible if you use it in the right way. But it always was a bit dicey on the initial sign-in screen. It required Explore by touch. You couldn't swipe from item to item. And so the most recent time I was setting up a new device, I thought, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to turn on screen recognition and see what it does. And believe it or not, it made that app completely accessible. I was able to use it like any other app. So there are times where screen recognition does work very, very well. And I think those times will continue to increase as time goes on, as the apps continue to become more built for it. And I think as the screen recognition feature itself continues to get better. While we're talking about accessibility features, I'm sure people have heard about the back tap. I want to point that out. On iPhone, you can tap, double or triple tap the back of your phone. You can make that a new gesture. And another feature that's not really a voiceover feature, but it's really, really useful. If you use the Apple Home app with HomeKit accessories, particularly cameras and doorbells, for the first time now, they can actually recognize who a person is. So in iOS 13, my camera was able to tell me, my iPhone or iPad, whatever, were able to tell me that, the camera detected a person, a vehicle, or an animal, or just motion in general. But now in iOS 14, I can go through, and some of them it's going to know already, and some of them I can go through my photo album or manually type the names of the people. And now it knows to tell me that, it's detected a person that might be Carson, my son, or that might be, a group of people, and one of them might be so-and-so. So it actually will identify people for you now. And for the first time, you can view your HomeKit cameras on Apple TV. Now, speaking of Apple TV, one of the things that the Apple TV has done is it's gotten even better with profiles. So in in tvOS 13, for the first time, profiles were introduced to the Apple TV so that each person could have their own up next queue of movies and TV shows and their favorite music. But now in tvOS 14, they can also have their own Game Center progress for each person in the family. And for the first time, there are new modes for voiceover on Apple TV, exploration mode and navigation mode, that truly do make it easier to navigate with voiceover and to change the options that are in the rotor on the fly based upon what you need. Now, there are new features that are being brought to the Apple Watch, features that we love. One of my favorites being the hand washing feature that can remind you to wash your hands when you get home, and will also notify you if you have washed your hands long enough. So you'll hear a running countdown timer of how long you've been washing your hands, and you'll be alerted when you've completed it successfully. And there are tons of features on watchOS. There are tons of features on the HomePod, and more coming very soon, like the new intercom feature that allows us to talk to each other across our HomePods, and Apple Maps CarPlay, so that we can ask our HomePod about a local pizza place, for example, and then instantly have those directions ready when we get in the car. To the What's My Update feature that automatically tells us the weather, tells us what's on our calendar, and lets us listen to a short briefing of today's top news stories. To features.
Matt,
Yes.
Can I interrupt you? We have two questions. Suzanne has her hand raised now, and then Matthew had his hand raised before. So Suzanne, you want to go first?
Whoops, I'm sorry about that. 1 second here.
Hello?
My phone decided to jump to something. There we go. Sorry about that. Anyhow, yeah, I'm actually at the point where I think I'm ready to take questions anyway, because we're about just a little over 15 minutes out. So yes, I'm happy to take those. I just want to say one final thing, if that's okay, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
And that last thing, just these two real quick little features. One of them is that the AirPods, if you've got AirPods or AirPods Pro, can now automatically switch. Let's say you're listening to music on an iPhone, and then all of a sudden you start a movie on the iPad. It can automatically switch from one device to another. And the last thing, for anybody that might have some sight and might be considering the Apple Pencil, for the first time on iOS 14, you can actually write with the Apple Pencil in any edit field that accepts text. You can literally now not just draw, but you can write, and it will turn that handwriting into actual written typed text that's searchable, that's all these things. So I just wanted to cover those two, and then yes, I'm ready to take questions. Absolutely.
Okay. Questions? Suzanne,
Okay.
go ahead.
If you have a cover on your iPad, I find that I tried to use the back tap and it wasn't working. Is it because of my cover?
So the back tap is mainly promoted as an iPhone feature, and I've not tested it on the iPad. But if you
No, this is the iPhone. I
Oh.
have an iPhone too.
Oh, the iPhone. Okay. What is
Um,
the cover that you're using on the iPhone? What is the case?
I don't know. It's clear, but it's very heavy.
Yeah, that second part is going to be the issue. That if
Okay.
it's a very bulky case, or if it's
Yeah.
providing a lot of give, and it's not, it's one of two extremes. If it's really, really bulky, it may be masking those taps completely. And if it's a very, very loose fitting case where it's not making constant contact with the back of the phone, then it may also be missed. So yeah, that may very well be the answer there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Matthew Graves, you have a question? Matthew to Matthew.
Sorry, I had to unmute. No, I was in Apps Club. We were talking about the Maps app, and I'm not sure if you know, as I was passing the houses and buildings going on my route, I actually announced the streets I was crossing and the addresses of the buildings.
Yes, that's correct. You can absolutely use it in that way for sure. Yep.
And one of the streets that was crossing on the opposite side, it comes out into a T, and I actually announced that address I was crossing the street.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm not sure if you knew that.
Any other questions? Do we have questions for Matt? That was a lot of information, Matt.
Yes.
I have a question. I couldn't raise my hand.
Go ahead.
It wasn't letting me. Matt, what about with the mentions? Where do you put you put the number sign and the name. Where do you put that so it shows up when you're notified with mentions?
You can really just put that anywhere in the context of the message that you're sending to the group. Just as you would naturally speak it in any way, it can fit in there. And as I said, sometimes depending on the placement of the message, they'll happen automatically, even if you don't put you don't remember to put the hashtag, but you type a person's name, it will, give you possible mentions anyway.
And then you just go in the rotor and swipe up to mentions. Is that what you do?
You go in the rotor and you set the rotor to mentions, and then you can swipe up and down to read through them. Yes. And again,
Okay.
The other big thing with that is it will, if you hide the alerts for that conversation, it will still notify you if you're mentioned.
Okay. Thank you.
Debbie, you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
I loved your presentation. It was very informative. But I have a quick question going back to the calendar.
Yes.
You mentioned that Siri could do some of this stuff. Is it possible to just dictate to Siri and say, put an event on my calendar for December 3rd at 11 p.m.?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I like to go into the calendar because there's a little bit more options that you have. You can try to get those options to work with Siri, but definitely for just creating basic events. If you've got your default alerts, like if you go to settings and calendar and you set your default alert times to whatever you like them to be, then you can just tell Siri to create an event and she'll do the rest. What I want to caution you about, if you're using Siri to create an event, is do not use, under any circumstances, do not use the word with unless you actually are intending to send an invite to somebody in your calendar. So
Interesting.
If you're having lunch with John, don't say create an event for next Friday called Lunch with John unless you actually want to send John an invite to his calendar, because it interprets that word with as an add invitees command. So just refrain from the word with unless you really want to use it. Other than
That's
that,
very
yeah.
interesting.
Yep.
Now, will it send me an alert if I do it if I put an event on the calendar using Siri, will it warn me that day or whenever?
Well, yeah, and that's where you want to have those default alert times set up ahead of time in settings so that you don't have, because normally if you were not using Siri and you were going into the calendar, you'd be able to set that on the fly there, okay, for this event, notify me a day ahead and also when it's time to leave or something, So make sure you go to settings and calendar before you ever start trying to do this and set your default alerts. They have default alerts for all day events, for one-time events, for birthdays, and something else. The time to leave, you can turn that on as well, so you automatically get that. So once those default alert times are set to your liking, then yeah, when you use Siri to create an event, she's going to honor those default alert times and notify you accordingly.
And when I set that up in settings, that it stays that way.
It stays that way, yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Could I just add something?
Sure.
In the when you get an email, like a Zoom invite, up on the top, you'll find Siri found an event, and you can add it by that. And the great thing is that it puts all the information in, and of course you have your default alerts, but it also puts the link for the Zoom, which makes it so much easier to get on these Zoom meetings.
Oh, absolutely. That's correct. And such good information, because Siri is working in the background and it sees that you've had this conversation with somebody and they say, here's your meeting. And it could be a formal Zoom invite, or it could be as simple as somebody saying, hey, don't forget about our meeting tomorrow night at 8, and Siri's going to use that and try to help you with that by offering to create an event or what have you. And yes, if there's a join link in the email or whatever, then that will get put into the event as well.
See, that doesn't work for me with the calendar, because that's what happened tonight. I went into my alerts, my reminders, and the link was right there. And I'm on the computer, so I hit enter on it, and it didn't even open the link.
Well, yeah, I think it might be a little different on the computer.
Right. What were you talking, Mac or PC?
PC.
Yeah, I honestly don't know there. Yeah.
We have another question from Tom.
Hi, Matt. Great presentation.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good. Now, maybe you would know, I've been trying to do this. If somebody sends me an iMessage and I have no information about their contact information, can I take somehow from their iMessage with their name and their email address, can I put that into contacts automatically?
Yes. Yeah. So the way that you do that, when you are in a message conversation that you have received from someone, the easiest thing to do is to tap up in the top left to get your orientation. That's the back button, as you know, I'm sure, which would take you, but don't use it. Just find it. And then if you swipe directly to the right, you're going to hear it say the name or the phone number, maybe in this case, of the person that texted you. You double tap on that and then immediately start swiping to the right. You're going to have three choices: audio, FaceTime, and info. You double tap on info and it displays additional details about the person that messaged you. Now you're going to go again to the right until you find info another time. So it's info once, and then this second time you got to find another info button and double tap on it. Now at that point, this is where you're going to swipe to the right and you're going to find these options like create new contact, add to existing contact. All that information is there, and you can just fill in the missing information yourself and hit done. And that's how you add that quickly to an existing or create a new contact. And in some cases, Siri, just like we talked about with the events, may already have some of that information and may offer you a shortcut, not really a literal Siri shortcut, but in other words, a quick way of adding it. It'll show it up there. If like somebody says, hello, my name is Melanie, and then you see that message and it says maybe Melanie. So now Siri's offering to let you do that right away. But the general procedure is the one that I just gave you will work.
Oh, super.
Excuse me,
Thank you
Matt.
very much.
Could you just say those steps one more time?
Yeah.
You're on the message.
Right. You have the message open, the actual conversation open. Right. And I recommend tapping at the top left first because it's easy to find that back button. Okay.
That's what you're looking for, the back button. Okay.
Correct. Swipe immediately to the right of that back button, and it's going to say if it's not in your contacts already, it's going to read the number. It's going to say like, 512-222, whatever. And then it's going to say button after you listen to that. You double tap there. And there are three things. You're going to land on the audio option. If you double tap, it'll make a voice call or a FaceTime call to that person. Then to the right of it is FaceTime. That's actually to create, and then the third one is info. So it's audio,
Info,
FaceTime,
okay.
and info. You double tap on info. And then on this screen that appears, you need to go again to the info button a second time, because this screen has additional details about the conversation, your location sharing, if you do that, maybe any photos or attachments, but it doesn't let you add it to the contacts here. You got to hit info one more time.
Gotcha.
And on that screen, swipe past all their contact information that's already there and those different choices. And near the bottom of the screen, you're going to have create new contact, add to existing contacts, and other relevant options.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
have two questions, Matt. One from Peggy Kane. Peggy, you go first, please.
Yeah.
Peggy? Peggy? Oh, Peggy.
No. Well, I just, what?
Okay.
Hi,
Okay,
Hi.
there you go, Peggy.
sorry. You were talking about when you're in an app and you wanted to recognize more of what's in that app. You were talking about the recognitions. I have an iPhone 7 and I can't get those to work, the recognition features.
No,
Can you tell me if it's because I have an iPhone 7 or is there
Yeah.
something I'm not doing?
It's because you have an iPhone 7.
Okay.
The iPhone 10 is the oldest version that will offer the screen recognition. You should get some degree of image recognition already on the 7, but it's not going to be like what you could get with a newer device.
Okay. Would there be a setting that I can get it to recognize things better?
Not on the 7.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Time to upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Next
Thanks.
question. Harry, you have a question?
I think you just answered it. Time to upgrade. That's my screen recognition. I have a 6 SE, so I really need to upgrade.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent,
Maybe you
though.
can get some good deals.
Oh, you can right now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But now what? Would an 8 SE do it? In
So
terms of just general, being able to use most of the things that are available in this new release?
There's an iPhone SE 2020 that would do it. That's still going to have a home button that's the same size as the 8, but it's newer specs. That's the iPhone SE 2020 or the iPhone SE second generation. That would do it. And then 10 or newer, 11, 12, all those would do it.
Is there any advantage from going between being at an 8 SE versus say a 10?
Well, that's the SE second generation is a brand new phone and it's a fantastic phone. It does have a home button and touch ID if that's important to you rather than Face ID. I like Face ID. I think
I'm not looking.
Face ID is very, very usable and very, works very well with VoiceOver, and it does add some additional features. But so I would not recommend at this stage of the game. I would not recommend a 10 or a 10R, any of those. I'd either go SE second generation or 11 or 12. Any of those series, would be recent enough.
Well, thank you so much. Very, very, very helpful.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Matt? Matt, I really want to thank you. This presentation was very informative. I think you're gonna have all of us in some of your classes.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
There's a lot to learn. You're getting a lot of applause by quite a few people, and I really thank you for your time. And now, maybe now that we all know a little bit more about this update, we can all rest a little easier now. But in closing, I want Matthew to take this because I want Matthew to have a chance to talk about the tech juggernaut. So go ahead, Matthew. Matt.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier on, and we mentioned during the intro, I do run this business called the Tech Juggernaut, and we do offer technology support and training services. We offer also support and consultations on purchasing of Apple products and on cord cutting, TV streaming, media streaming, home automation, home security, and we also do website design and ebook design as well. Now, we offer a lot of paid services, paid training packages, premium support that, is for a fee, but we also offer these free classes. And right now we've got a class going on called Learning Voiceover In and Out. And we've got about roughly 150 students, 145 to be exact, who are in that class, and it's completely free. And we're teaching voiceover on iOS from the ground up. It is something like a 12-week course. It's going on all the way through to the week of right before Christmas. And then we have more courses coming up in the spring. We have a course on the Macintosh in January. We have an iPad course starting in March. All of these courses are completely free. And in addition to that, even if you're not enrolled in a course or you don't think you have time or interest in enrolling in a course, we also offer free virtual help sessions every Tuesday and Thursday. And they are at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and so on. And they are completely online using the WebEx platform, which works very, very similar to Zoom. You can join those. There's no special invite or registration or sign up needed or anything like that. What you want to do, I'll tell you how to find out about them in a little bit. And you get that link and you just join. And you will get time to ask your questions, just like if you were coming into a store and making an appointment. You're going to get a slot. You're going to get time to ask your Apple product questions or what have you. And we've got a team of us there ready to answer them. They last about 2 to 3 hours every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, starting at 3 p.m. Now, I will tell you the way to find out about all of this and keep up to date as to what's going on. The website for my business is the Tech Juggernaut. It's ttjtech.net. So that's TTJ, like Tango, Juliet, and then the word tech, TECH.net. So ttjtech.net. Now, on that website, right on the main page, without you ever having to go to another link, there's a place where you can enter your email address to subscribe to the blog. And if you can't find it, there's a menu and widgets button. You may have to expand the menu. It's one of those, expanding kind of things. And then you can find it. And that edit field will allow you to enter your email address so that you can subscribe to our TTJ blog. That's where we provide the links for those help sessions about an hour before they begin. That's where we share information about promotions that we're doing, discounts on products. I can tell you that, we don't sell products directly. We can help you buy Apple products. We're not an authorized reseller or anything, but we do sell our own products. There's several packages, training packages, support packages, and there's also a book that I have written, a couple books that I've written on different subjects, but they were written entirely on Apple devices, so it's kind of cool to talk about them. I wrote a book about the Titanic for the 100th anniversary. That's actually in the middle of undergoing a rewrite too, because every year I reread that book. And I'd say to myself, what needs to be updated about this book from last year? I know I'm not perfect and I can get it wrong and I can have things to add and to clarify. I normally do that every April in time for the anniversary of the sinking. But this year, with a lot of extra things we were doing in the spring, that didn't happen. But it's happening now. And I can tell you there's going to be a lot of cool stuff added to that book this year. We hope to have it out by Thanksgiving. So that's going to be on there. And of course, our tech packages, as I said, our training and support stuff. And we're going to be giving away a couple of iPads this year, which is really awesome. And I'm super excited about that. So you can find all that information if you subscribe to the blog. And lastly, I have a podcast as well. Technically, I have two. The other one is a Christian podcast called The Vessel, but the one that's most relevant to what we're talking about tonight is called TTJ Talk. Again, Tango, Tango, Juliet, and then the word talk, T-A-L-K. Now, you can learn about that on the TTJ Tech website, but you can also find it on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever you like to listen to podcasts on, it should be there. You just ask for TTJ Talk. So I think that's all the information you need in order to get in touch with us. And we hope you will. We hope you'll subscribe to the blog, join us for some help sessions and so on. And thank you so much again for having me tonight. I really, really appreciate it.
Matt, the books that you
Thank
have,
you.
the training books, are they on Apple? Books?
Yeah.
Matthew, we have another question. Someone had raised their hand.
Oh.
Debbie Azaroom.
Okay, yes, and yes, they are on Apple Books. Get in touch with me and I'll give you those names afterwards, Christina. That's fine.
Thanks.
Sure. Yes, Debbie.
Thank you so much.
It's just way
Yes.
Debbie?
much going on. So I would.
Debbie, you have a question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Matt, I subscribe to your RSS feed, and
Oh, okay.
I'm told that that's going the way of the dinosaur, not yours in particular, but RSS feeds in general. All that information you were talking about, I think I can find on your RSS feed, can I?
I would say so. And I really don't have information on the status of RSS feeds, but I do know people do use them that way. And there's, one of the instructors on our team even uses an app called Feedly. I don't remember how it's spelled. It's an odd spelling, but he, it aggregates all his different blogs and RSSs and stuff. So yeah, you should be able to find all that.
That's where I get a lot of your articles from.
Yes.
Right from the RSS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
Yes, Matt,
I'd like
thank
to tell
you.
that Matthew's information will be posted on the VLANJ Tech Talks page, the Facebook page. So we'll make sure that that information is posted so you could join and subscribe to the blog. And I also want to thank you for joining Tech Talks, hosted by Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. Matthew, your presentation was awesome and can't get enough information. So
Thank you so much.
if anyone has any questions, please contact our organization, and our number is 973-627-0055. And on that note, we will see you next month, December 2nd. We will have Eve Posner with Orchid. She'll be our guest next month. And I wish you all well and good night and stay healthy.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you,
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah,
Be
everybody. God
safe.
bless.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Good night,
you.
Good
everybody.
night.
It was wonderful. Thank you. Good night.
Good.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
In the daytime, and I was going to school from 5 to about 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Hello. They right there.